So I think we can start, and I guess because of the late night edition of airhacks TV, it's going to be a silent show. Okay, welcome to the 133rd edition of airhacks TV, and I already got good questions from Shane, and so let's read that. Hey Adam, looking forward to the upcoming AX session. So thank you for that. And Zoltan is here. Perfect. This is the friend of the show. Zoltan is one of the recurring viewers. So thank you, Zoltan. And Shane asked me, what stage are people at writing Gen AI applications in Java? Or integrating AI use cases into the existing Java apps? Are they learning, prototyping, developing, using in production? So my clients, commercial clients, are larger companies, and I get consistently questions. They ask me like the following: look, we have lots of enterprise applications, and we need at least a story what to do with LLMs. So they need answers how to extend or integrate, or whether it is reasonable to integrate existing enterprise applications with LLMs. And and the next problem I see, the enterprise applications or the enterprise landscape is a little bit different, because the architects and the PMs and so forth, they're believing, okay, LLM is not that useful for enterprise space. But on the other hand, managers would like to know, or product managers would like to use, or at least market LLMs somehow. So what happens usually is the following. It is hard for most larger companies to come with useful use cases. This is the problem I see. So what I try to do is I treat LLMs as a microservice. So I just wrap an LLM with an API, and there is the LLMs are behind this API, so we can call it, we get an answer. And in this particular case, they become more interested with that approach, because it's not like, freestyle question answer, or more like I push data to the LLM and I get evaluation back, which is even type safe. So what we usually do, LLMs are answering, somehow, is it consistent, inconsistent, or I don't know, so like an enum or a number. So what we already did is we implemented some proof of concepts with bin validation like structure, and input validation, fraud detection, product configuration, consistencies, and it was like augmenting or extending user or existing users, expertise, and not replacing users or not deciding without users. So and this we had a good experience with that. Next question is, are you seeing an increase in activity in LangChain4j? Yeah, absolutely. I would say this LangChain4j was the first, and because of LangChain, the name LangChain4j is gaining adoption. I also see here at conferences Spring AI, but because maybe I usually spend time in the past Jakarta E and MicroProfile, and now I'm using Jakarta E and MicroProfile, and don't talk too much about that, because I talk for years about Jakarta E and MicroProfile, but all my projects right now are MicroProfile and Jakarta E based, and therefore LangChain4j is the natural thing to pick. And and this is what okay, so LangChain4j instead of Python. So this doesn't happen. So my impression is that the scientists or developers who are using Python and the enterprise users who are using LangChain4j. They are two distinct group of people. And because if you're using LangChain4j, you already are in the Quarkus enterprise space. And in this particular case, you are more interested in operations and production releases. Whereby, if you're coming from the Python space, you are usually in Jupyter Notebook space, and the deployments are out of scope. And I mentioned in the recent sessions and also workshops that there is a framework called DJL, and the framework is used by Amazon internally to save costs. And this is Java based. So the model inference happens on Java, and the training happens with Python or Python help. So the question is, so what I expect in next years is the following: that you get the model, and the model inference will happen on Java, or and directly or indirectly, because Java is really good to have a clean packaging, dependency management, SBOMs, and so forth. So and Python is relatively hard to have a clean deployment with Python. It's messier than Java. So this is at least my impression. And what I think, what you can do, or no, what I think, what you can do with LangChain4j and Quarkus. LangChain4j is also available as Quarkus extension. So what you could do is you can have a Java application with Quarkus, LangChain4j on GraalVM or Mandrel, and package everything to one big model, or to one big file, which is easily shippable to production, for instance. I expect to see more LLM projects in production which are running on Java, regardless how the models were created. So this is my impression. Having said that, Java is really good in inference and is orders of magnitude faster than Python. Whereby I would say, but it is not in LLM is a very specific place, because in the Python case, Python doesn't do much. Python just calls C APIs, which we could also do with Java 24 and FFM API. And having said that, Java 24 is out, which is just, I would say, bigger release, and it ships with gatherers, which is like a mix of map and collectors. And what's really enjoyable is the FFM API. And if you're curious, in the recent shorts, I recorded a short with FFM API. Okay, so any interesting use cases you can share application Java being worked on the wild. So in my case, my personal airhacks industries case is the show notes for airhacks TV are completely created with GenAI. But I have to say, I usually edit this. I remove, the more obvious points. But I would say 90% AI created with review. airhacks FM, completely the show notes in the recent shows is also AI created. Now, back to the enterprise applications. Address validation, fraud detection, product configuration consistency. Then in one project we thought about, or we created actually data from a data lake apps, which were, because the GenAI is very good with SQL, where the product manager express ideas what should happen, and the developer got like a generated template, which was really easy to extend. So with time savings and productivity increases. And so in this direction. So what most of the use cases was not like we let like vibe coding. And by the way, you have to check out my short about vibe coding. Only Java can do this. So what I did vibe vibe coding with Java, and I completely skipped the source code and said, okay, in Java we can just generate the bytecode by LLMs and ship directly to production. And this is because in vibe coding no one cares about the source code, so you can just generate the bytecode, right? And this is a minor fact. This was recorded on the April the 1st, so just as a hint. Okay, so I have lots of use cases, but I think the best use cases are where the user gets additional hints from the AI, to better found the user's decision, right? So this would be the best possible case. So yeah. And I cannot talk too much because I have NDAs with my clients. But one proof of concept was also cool. This was like a code review where we were able to review parts of the code and Maven poems and stuff like that. So it was also interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now, maybe JavaONE. So I attended JavaONE in Redwood Shores, which is, I would say, 30 kilometers away from San Francisco, I would say. 30, 40 kilometers. So it's Silicon Valley, California. Was colder than in Germany, interestingly. And it was even rain the first 2 days. So maybe it was like fake California, not the real one. So this was at least my impression. But let's assume it was JavaONE in California where I was. What I have to say, the conference is nice. And I wanted to find something to criticize it, but I couldn't. So it was completely different to the previous JavaONEs because it was different building. It was not in San Francisco. But having said that, it starts with the coffee. So there was, hey, Shane. So if you are happy with the answer, great. If not, keep asking here in the chat. But back to JavaONE is the coffee was already great. I mean, the filter coffee was great. And we got, in addition, it was never before, we got a great cappuccino. Not only cappuccino, there were, I think, like 7 specialities coffee. I mean, what was it? Cortado, I think. There was cortado, cappuccino, and we got espresso and whatever, right? So there were lots of. So the coffee was already good. Then the content. So there was like I think it was auditorium, and in the auditorium there were mostly Oracle architect, Oracle engineers, Java engineers to talk about Java APIs, gatherers, new features, which I really enjoyed. I spent all the time there. So this was many of my reasons. One of my reasons to attend JavaONE is to listen to their talks and to talks from Oracle employees or JDK committers, not only Oracle employees, and there were, because it was everything in one building and you had 15 minutes time between the sessions, there were enough time for hallway conversations. And so the content was great, the session was great, it was well organized, the vibe was good. What was really surprising in JavaONE, I asked the question in my talk, and I asked attendees on the hallways, so was your first time? And I would say 2/3 or more answered yes, this was my first time at JavaONE. Then my next question was how do you like it? And the answer was it's great or good. So I never heard something negative about JavaONE, which is remarkable. Food was great. The parties were good. I have to say, there's nothing to complain. I have to say, maybe one thing was missing were birds of feather. This was a typical late night session in JavaONE, but I was glad that that didn't happen. I have to say, because JavaONE, it was the most exhaustive, I would say, week of the entire year. JavaONE. It started at 8 in the morning and until 11 p.m. So this was a typical JavaONE day. And sometimes there were parties after 11 p.m. Parties, I would say, you went to a party and had conversations about Java at the party. So it was a kind of a party. And I was annoyed at the parties that the music was too loud, which was not the case at this JavaONE. Okay, so this was my feedback, good one, and I will try to attend next year as well. So maybe see you at JavaONE. And by the way, I got lots of people came to me and they knew. Some knew about the airhacks TV, but more people knew about the podcast, which airhacks FM. Where is it? Here. And this surprised me that the podcast is somehow popular because it seems like some Java developers are listening to it, which was not clear to me because I had no time to implement the metrics. So I have a podcast and I have no idea how many people listen to the podcast. And what also surprised me is they are listened to from YouTube and Spotify and so forth. And then we had chat about the podcast and what the listeners ask me. This is a lot of work to publish all the episodes, but I do nothing. So this is the interesting part. I only have an RSS feed, and the episodes are on Spotify, YouTube, and so forth. So the Spotify just scraps my feed, and they cache maybe the episodes, whatever they are doing. But I do nothing regarding Spotify. So the episodes are published automatically. Okay, and there are some episodes, also fun one about Predator plans with Volker, and database cloud with how to run Postgres as a service. Okay, WM is cancelled for today. What it means, WM? Is it cancelled for today? It is not cancelled for today because we are talking right now, right? So I would say, yeah. So now, JavaLand Afterglow. So JavaLand, another conference, similar story, not similar story. I attended lots of Java ones and I skipped this one in Las Vegas. And I was curious and attended this one in Redwood Shores. And what I have to say as well, I thought it would be a disaster and I will go back to hotel and work the entire day. And instead, I spent the entire day at the JavaONE. So this was the difference. Sorry for that. So the stream was healthy. So what I did right now, I stopped and started the stream. So and it seems works right to work right now. And where am I right now is to express the JavaLand Afterglow. And so JavaLand is a conference similar to JavaONE, but German one, community conference. It runs for 12 years. It was my very first time to attend the JavaLand. I never did it before because I never had time. It was beginning of the year, which is near the end of the year and is always crazy. And but it's okay, this year I have to go. And I delivered keynote about 30 years of Java. And what's interesting is I prepared, lots of stuff about past Java technologies. And I also created a GitHub repository, Java archives. And I will put some research from the keynote there if I find some time. But I plan at least to have a list of application servers servers, application servers, and a list of IDEs. And maybe crazy projects, and you are, of course, this will be marked down. You are welcome. You are welcome to contribute as well, of course. Genau. Okay. Now, so the interesting part is that the JavaLand conference was on Nürburgring, which is a famous racetrack in Germany. I was never there before. And I said, okay, this is not that exciting, but it actually was. So the interesting part of the Nürburgring is, it is actually middle of nowhere. It is absolutely in the woods. So I would say you have to, from Cologne, you have to drive 1 hour, and from Koblenz also 1 hour. And it was on the hill. So if you look around, there was just forest around the racetrack, which I didn't expect. So it was actually a beautiful landscape. And and we are able to visit the racetrack, which was also interesting. And there were some race drivers, proper ones, and I teased them a little bit and asked them, what's your opinion about electric cars and stuff like that, right? So I had a lots of fun, and it was great community-driven conference, and it was it is organized by a foundation. It's called DOAG, and it was started with I think Oracle application group, but now it's decoupled from Oracle. Now it's Java, Oracle, and everywhere can contribute. And they have a proper bus. And it was interesting part what I had a chat with the organizer. They have a round trip. They had a round trip across Germany with the bus, and had conferences inside the bus with pizza oven and everything. So I would say a really fun bunch of people. The DOAG, German. And I like the conference. It was similar vibe to JavaONE. So there were lots of attendees who had really fun attending the conference. Also, it was from my perspective well attended. So I would say way over 1,000 attendees. But they told me it is a little bit less because the Nürburgring is so hard to get. And by the way, by the train is almost mission impossible. So it would be like 2.5 hours in the train. Okay, so this was the JavaLand afterglow. So now go there. And what we see here is a 9 years old post. This is the 33rd airhacks, so time machine. And as always, I would like to go through the old questions and just quickly revisit them, because I also told us that JavaLand is great fun because it didn't change that much in 9 years, and usually we get similar answers for the same questions after 9 years. So Java 8 news. So we have already Jakarta 11, right? So it is like 3 versions in 9 years. Yeah. And what changed? Not that much. I would say Java 8 still great release. And by the way, I also delivered a talk like brief introduction to Jakarta APIs, and it was also well attended. So it was I had 3 talks. This was the keynote, LLM talk, and the Jakarta talk, and then a chat with Ed Burns as well. So managing logs in central location, I would say more important than ever, especially in the clouds. So I use, for instance, usually on AWS CloudWatch, and the centralized logging is a part of the deal, right? So if you have Lambda or Fargate or EC2, they are logging in a central place. Similar story in Azure, and there are third-party providers. But I would say the entire logging discussion was hot 9 years ago, and now we just log because decentralization is just built in. What's also interesting, application scope for services. And so I'm using this right now. I'm using mostly application services because most of my applications right now are serverless, like Quarkus Lambda. And if you are in serverless landscape, every request is a thread. So the request scope does not make any sense because you will never get 2 instances inside a thread. So yeah, so this is why it is true. But I have to say also most of the backend applications of Quarkus applications are application scoped, and request scope we use if you have user data or something which is user specific, so you can cache the entire request. So application scope is almost a standard right now, and yeah. And back then there was discussion because request scope is slower and was slower than EJBs, and therefore the question is, should we use application scope to have better performance? So this was lots of discussions back then. So exception factories, why I created exception factory a long time ago. So I cannot tell you why I did it this back then, but I can tell you right now, I have, I don't know whether we call it exception factory or error factory, but sometimes we need a defined format, error format. And for that, we have a kind of response factory, and the responses are created and automatically formatted so that this, how to call it, you get always, the same format in JSON with the same headers in JAX-RS, right? Okay, then util packages, it is the same story over and over again. Still see this in projects. Util, common, foundation, all nicely sounding packages are not allowed or not allowed. They are questionable in my projects. And because if you have generic names, you can put everything there. It is not cohesive. It's really hard to establish cohesion in generic packages, because whatever you put in util is always right. That's the problem. So usually such packages tend to grow over time. So we can skip that, because I think for years I didn't implemented any JavaFX applications recently. It's not because I don't like JavaFX, but because it happened. So right now, since pandemic, most of the time in the clouds and web components with JavaScript. So managing JDBC drivers in Docker. I forgot about the problem back then, but but what happens also since pandemic, I didn't use relational databases anymore. Why not? Is because of costs. So there were cost pressure in the cloud, and what I did is we use S3 or DynamoDB or other databases just because to save costs, and there is no JDBC driver usually. How to run a DB in container? Interestingly, the database cloud, there's 1 hour about this. So what the database cloud does, they are running Postgres with Stagres on Kubernetes. So if you're interested in it, so there's the entire episode about that. Okay, I lost here. To share or not to share DB. So still, I would say right now in my projects, we try to be single tenant. So we have one table per customer, or one database per customer if possible. I try not to share database or resources between clients. This is always better and easier to manage. Yeah, there's lots of Docker back then, private and Docker images. So sometimes we have to do image, or sometimes we still have to push Docker images to have, for instance, ECS Fargate cluster for specific cases. And we use ECR for that on AWS. Most of my project right now are on AWS. This is just push to ECR, Elastic Container Registry. Also interesting. This is incredible. The questions 9 years ago, because the same questions I answered actually JavaLand conference during the session, and what happened is I prefer nowadays JSONP over JSONB or DTOs. Reason being is usually we have we have always requirements regarding versioning of DTOs, and with JSONP is way easier. Right, so you can publish a field or not. If you have JSONB, it's always hard to tell is the field null or just doesn't exist at all, or must not be null. Right, so there are too many states for a field. Then also queuing choices, and I would say hopefully consistent answer over the years. So I try to have just synchronous communication. I use just queuing if there is a problem or the use case is asynchronous. Otherwise, everything becomes more complicated. Rolling updates, interestingly, is built in. So if you have lambdas, you have rolling updates. It's just done. There's nothing else to do. You don't have, to augment the application load balancer. The rolling updates just happen behind the scenes because the old lambda is active until the new lambda takes over. What also interesting, Lombok. There was still a discussion on LinkedIn about Lombok, and and I would say Lombok becomes less and less attractive with modern Java, especially with Java records and modern APIs. I would say I never use Lombok. I only see this in projects I review or projects I had to maintain somehow, but I never introduced Lombok so far. Okay, this was that. And now System in Code says we are using Java services with Vue.js and Node. But now looking at Vaadin to let back and devs help with frontend. Do you believe in this approach? Anything else like Blazor you recommend today? So I have to say Vaadin has a comeback. So I see them on conferences. There are lots of excited developers. So the question is always, let's say you do something in Vaadin, and you spend, let's say, 2 weeks developing the application in Vaadin. What happens if Vaadin disappears in a few years? So then this is front-end. So you will move to something else. So nowadays, I would use, if you really like Java, go with Vaadin. Good choice, because Vaadin also has Vaadin elements, which are web components. And web components are technology. They are just standard. So there's just part of the browser. In all my projects, I use web components directly and also Vaadin web components. So I would say Vaadin is a really good choice. Okay, and now Shane connected and my stream was unhealthy. So just brief recap of the 3 questions. So what I said is big companies ask me how to integrate enterprise applications with LLMs, existing enterprise applications with LLMs. What is the story? Should we do it or not? How to package and so forth. Just to get how to run the entire thing in production. Then increase in LangChain4j. Yes, there's a LangChain4j. Most developers know about that. LangChain4j is similar to LangChain, but what I don't see that someone migrates from LangChain on Python to LangChain4j Java, because there's distinct, my observation, of course, there's distinct group of people, the Java developers and Python developers, because Java developers, they care more about operations and production deployments, and I see this less in Python. They are more interested in finding, the right LLM to pick, and if they invoke the LLM, they think they are done. And then the question is how to run the entire Python dependency ball in production. And what I also mentioned, there are frameworks like DJL.ai, for instance, that was sponsored by Amazon or AWS. I know that Amazon uses Java for inference to save costs, because Java is multi-threaded, and if it runs faster than Python, it's faster. And there are lots of GenAI use cases, but what I think maybe a new take, because I already mentioned that, what I also would like to say, what is the future of the entire GenAI in enterprise? I would say what I expect to happen in the next few years is that we get smaller, more dedicated models which do one thing and do it well. And this will happen with, for instance, model distillation. So we have a big model and we can distill from the big model a smaller model. What distillation means is more like lightweight training. So you have a set of prompts, and the smaller model uses the prompts to learn facts from the larger model. And you can even use Claude for that. And so we get smaller models, and these smaller models can be run on your local machine even. And Java is really good with that. So you can run a model, you can have a model inference, and Java will run as fast as C and faster than Python. What's also stunning, and this podcast episode is in the pipeline, that SIMD, so Java Vector API, is in some cases as fast as a modest, I would say, GPU. So and expect a podcast with Tornado VM soon about that. And and which use cases, the product configuration validation, code reviews, dependency reviews, then fraud detection, address validation, lots of use cases. But what I try to do is to use the AI as additional, how to call it? It is more like the AI contributed to the use case, but it was never the decision, It is dangerous, I think, because the AIs are not deterministic, and under heavy load, problems happens. So what's good with AI or Gen AI is if it provides you additional information, which helps the user to decide, right? So augment the user decision. Okay, Alex Nerd says hello. Hey, Alex, friend of the show. So I would say, I think we are done. So we recap the Gen AI story, and if you are interested to look at Llama 3 Java, this is local inference, and I also show this on in JavaLand conference, and still everyone, Java developers, like, wow, you can have 10 tokens per second for Llama model on your local machine without internet. Yes, this is possible right now. Okay. If you like, see you in summer. So I'm already thinking about use cases and what I will show you. And this hardcore serverless Java will be hardcore because we had already some introductory, I would say, sessions. And with the LLMs, I plan to show some RAG and interesting architectures and maybe code interpreters, and of course pure Java with reduced dependencies. So I would say thank you a lot, and see you next month, right? And hopefully at 8 p.m. first Monday of the month. So long, thank you, and bye.